Okay, so good afternoon, dear delegates and colleagues. Or if you can hear me, maybe you can raise your hand or send some other signs in the team.
We can hear you, Keijing.
Okay. So could they hear me? I'm not sure.
Can you hear us from CICG?
Yes, we can hear you. Can you hear us?
Yes, perfectly now.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, dear delegates and colleagues. It's my pleasure to welcome you on stage to the side event, Risks and Opportunities of Plastic Credit Financing Instruments for the Informal Waste Management Sector. It's a hybrid event, and I've already seen my colleagues and many participants are online who could not make it today on the ground. So good day to all the cyber participants from different time zones. This event is co-organized by Yunus Environment Hub and our organization. My name is Keijing Wang from China Biodiversity Conservation and Green Development Foundation. And I would like without any further ado, I would like to welcome Christina Wiego, who is the co-founder and managing director of Yunus Environment Hub, who will moderate this side event today. So Christina, now you have the floor.
Thank you so much, Keijing. Just double confirming, and I'm well audible. Yes, perfect. So thank you so much and welcome also from my side. My name is Christina Jäger and I'm a co-founder and the managing director of Yunus Environment Hub, which is a global organization dedicated to developing solutions for the circular economy and zero net carbon emissions by using the social business approach that has been pioneered by our co-founder and chairman, Nobel Peace Prize laureate, Professor Muhammad Yunus. Yunus Environment Hub has coordinated, conducted, and edited a study on risks and opportunities of plastic credit financing instruments for the informal waste management sector on behalf of UNEP as part of the Sea Circular project, reducing marine litter by addressing the management of the plastic waste value chain in Southeast Asia, which is implemented by UNEP and the coordinating body on the seas of East Asia, with funding support from the government of Sweden. I would like to introduce our first speaker, Kamala Ernest from UNEP, project coordinator for Sea Circular, to set the scene for the research presentation. And while I hand over the word to Kamala, I'll share with you the download link for the report in case you have not accessed it yet. Over to you, Kamala.
Thank you, Christina, and also greetings from Bangkok. My name is Kamala, project coordinator of Sea Circular from UNEP, and it's a great pleasure to be here. If we look at the problem, I think it's a global problem that we all are aware of, and the data, the statistics are there in terms of what the world is producing and how much plastic is actually turned into waste. Almost 2/3 of all plastic productions are converted into waste because of poor recycling and waste management system, especially in the developing world. So, so what we are trying to do is to look at also how we can convert such a problem into a useful opportunity that has multiple co-benefits. So just a little bit about Sea Circular Project. It is the largest regional project of UNEP in the Southeast Asia region. It aims to address marine plastic pollution by improving the management of plastic value chain. As Christina already mentioned, funded by the government of Sweden, and we are implementing this project in 6 countries to inspire market-based solutions and enabling policies to reduce land-based plastic leakage from entering the marine environment, as well as strengthening data science on marine litter. So the project focuses on a circular economy for plastics approach, as well as a human rights-based approach to increase the rate of recycling, to increase reuse and collection, as well as to avoid the hard to recycle plastic materials where waste management system is inadequate to manage them, as well as the informal sector can contribute significantly to achieve the objectives of the project. So in terms of our collaboration with YEH, this started through our regional networking event, the Sea of Solutions, where we wanted to look at innovative financing mechanism to address plastic pollution that could have multiple co-benefits, including the incorporation of a human rights-based approach and social benefits that can be enjoyed, or especially for the marginalized and vulnerable groups. So there were already a few plastic credit projects on the ground, but there were limited knowledge and awareness sharing, especially in the Southeast Asia region. So UNEP partnered with YEH to carry out this research to have a better understanding on plastic credit approaches for the informal waste sector. So here the study specifically focused on what businesses should know and what they should factor in if they want to embark on plastic credit schemes, as well as the risk and challenges associated with it. I would also like to mention that this is a great opportunity that we all have, because last year also there is already a high-level commitment with more than 193 member states endorsing for a global agreement to end plastic pollution, and through the establishment of an international negotiating committee that is looking at the full life cycle of plastics. So there are great opportunities to bring these learnings, the discussions on plastic credits, its challenges, and also opportunities for harmonization and standardization that can be applied across globally. With this, I would hand over to Christina. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kamala, for the introduction. Next, I would like to briefly talk about the study methodology. The study follows a qualitative exploratory research approach, combining a thorough literature analysis and semi-structured guideline interviews as main source of data collection. Overall, about 40 interviews were conducted with experts from academic and research-centered institutions, as well as with a variety of stakeholders from the plastic waste value chain. Additional interviews were conducted with informal waste collectors, as well as with a scrap shop owner from TrangAng province in southern Vietnam, to include the voice of the informal sector. Before we go into the study presentation, I would like to take the opportunity briefly to express our gratitude to UNEP for entrusting us with this important study. And I look forward to a fruitful discussion today that will hopefully provide useful insights for the ongoing BRS-COP and plastic treaty negotiations. You will see in the report that we recommend that further research is needed on this novel topic, and we will appreciate any interested parties or organizations to reach out to us for further discussion and collaboration. Without further ado, I would like to introduce our other speakers who were being interviewed and who have contributed with their valuable experiences and expertise to the study. And we will do this in a interactive format that I will present some of the risks and then discuss it together with the panelists, open the floor for questions, and then we go into the opportunities and the recommendations and also open the floor for questions from the room. For online attendees, please feel free to leave the questions in the chat box. So I would like to give the floor to each of the panelists to please introduce yourself briefly, 1 minute, since we need to catch up a bit of the time. And I will start with Costa Vélez, who is a lecturer and researcher on research efficiency systems at University of Leeds. Over to you, Costa.
Thank you, Christina. It's a great pleasure to be here on the launching of this very important report. I'm an academic, as you said. I'm based at the University of Leeds in the UK. We have been working on waste and resources management and circular economy over the years, and looking also on the plastics pollution. Also, trying to work with the informal waste collectors and recyclers, because they deliver such important services to the environment and the overall resource efficiency. So I'm very pleased that we have the opportunity, some of this expertise, to be incorporated and forward here the agenda. Thank you.
Thanks, Costa, for being with us here. Next, I would like to give the word to Barak Ekstein, who is the founder of LeedsTontoton.
Thank you, Christina. It's a pleasure to meet you. Hello, everyone. LeedsTontoton is an impact company that focuses on treating, collecting, and finding solutions for mismanaged, non-recyclable, low-value plastic in coastal areas. We do it through creating a network of community of waste pickers that can collect the waste, especially the non-recyclable one, and then bring it to us. The leading principle that guides us is leave nothing and no one behind. With that, we spot a problem in the sector of the recycling system, that the waste picker collecting only the value material and leave the non-value on the ground. And with that, there is a massive amount of non-recyclable plastic that left untouched. There is no financial incentive to anyone to treat those materials, and therefore they just stay there most of the time in the most polluted communities. And this is where the plastic credit comes in as a financial instrument that companies can support and move, basically shift from selective collection of only value material to inclusive collection of all materials, and by that leave nothing and no one behind. We work in Cambodia and Vietnam. We managed to create a network of around 800 informal waste pickers and segregation units to stop the leakage at source in places where there is no proper waste management. So far, we collected around 3,000 tons of mismanaged non-recyclable plastic and find solution for it. Thank you.
Thank you, Barak. Thanks for being with us today. Last but not least, I would like to introduce Sonia Diaz, who is a waste specialist at Wiego. Over to you, Sonia.
Thank you so much for the invitation. It's such a pleasure to be here. I am Sonia Diaz. I am Wiego's Women in Informal Employment Globalizing and Organizing resident corpologist. I have 10 years as a city officer at the Municipal Cleaning Agents of Belo Horizonte City, Brazil, where we implemented a municipal recycling system in partnership with a cooperative, with cooperatives of waste pickers. My academic work, both my master's and doctorate, are on inclusive recycling. And at Wiego, I've been assisting our local teams across the world in their work in supporting waste pickers to gain visibility and policies. And I also lead Wiego's Brazil work, which includes research and policy work on gender and waste, on occupational health, on climate change and just transition. And I work closely with the national movement of waste pickers of Brazil and many professional networks such as the Inclusive and Solidarity Recycling Observatory, the waste and citizenship platforms around Brazil. And right now, my team has just finished the field work of a climate change impact mapping in Brazil with cooperatives and non-organized waste speakers, which includes a survey and qualitative methods and city profiles on climate change. So stay tuned for the findings. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thanks so much for being with us, Sonia. So in order to get started, I will briefly highlight the risks that we identified in the report, and then we're going to deep dive into 3 of them. For the others, please feel free to consult the report for the details. So let me just briefly read out what were the risks that we identified throughout the literature research and both throughout the interviews that we were conducting. First, there's the risk of insufficient distribution of plastic credit income, meaning the way how one credit is being distributed along the waste value chain. A second risk that we identified is that there may be the risk of creating dependency on voluntary sources of funding for the organizations or companies who are engaged in the waste collection, and eventually also the informal waste collectors that are being connected to them. 3, there might be income vulnerability due to the quantities-based compensation methodology that is mostly used at the moment. Number 4, a big risk of leaving relevant socioeconomic dimensions unconsidered because a great focus is on the environmental aspect. Number 5, there might be the risk of excluding key waste management stakeholders due to rigid standardizations. And number 6, also connected to that, an overburdening due diligence and reporting requirements, especially for small-scale organizations or organizations that are operating in the informal economy. And lastly, also last but not least, a very important risk, the risk of manifesting the status quo, that actually nothing is being changed on the upstream part of reducing plastic production and consumption, especially for the hard-to-recycle materials. And the first risk that I would like to make a deep dive is on the insufficient distribution of plastic-related income. So between informal waste management stakeholders involved in activities at the lower end of the plastic waste value chain, on the one hand side, and the buyers of plastic rates on the other hand, a variety of intermediary organization and process steps exist. Stakeholders from the bottom of the pyramid may not receive significant financial benefits from plastic credits due to a large proportion of the additional income being distributed along the waste management value chain beforehand. And I would like to ask Barak, since you're an organization who is selling plastic credits and working with a big focus on informal sector workers, from your personal and practical experience, how do you ensure that workers at the bottom of the value chain benefit from plastic credits?
Yeah, absolutely. So the workers are the beating heart of the collection. So they are the one who actually doing all the job and collecting. And while we are focusing on the mismanaged non-recyclable plastic, the one that has no value, we have to keep the price level of what we are paying per kilo when we are purchasing, we are buying the plastic from them and incentivize them to collect it in a certain way which is not higher than the value material that is on the market. Because if we will offer higher price, let's say like $200 per ton, while they can sell PET, like value material, is lower, so we will start to get all the material, like the value and the low value. So the price way should be the highest that we can pay for low value, which should be a bit lower than the value material. Otherwise, we will interrupt the market, the natural market. and then we will start to get more value because they will sell to the one who get. But with that, the opportunities in low value plastic are much bigger. So there is a big competition on the value material. PET everyone wants, everyone collects. Same for PP and HDP, but the other materials are all over. And this is the huge amount and big pollution. And when we start to open our gates, basically to buy a certification, buy some agreement and guidelines, what to collect from what and from where, we start to receive a lot of material. And some waste pickers go to a monthly salary of average $500, $600 per month, comparing to $200, $300 that usually in the market for waste pickers. So the opportunity is much bigger because there is much more material available to collect because nobody collected before. But then the price per kilo cannot be higher than what the market offers for value material. And then there is more benefits that we can offer in terms of some social security, some loans, microloans, better working conditions, and so on that can benefit them. What the traditional market of recycled material buyers not doing so much. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Barak, for sharing those insights. And I guess a key challenge is also that there is no global standard on defining how the distribution of a plastic rate should be done, which could take into consideration different aspects of income levels and also plastic materials also being collected. Kostas, maybe a question to you. Have you seen any new tools or advances to support income distribution and sharing of wealth across the value chain?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Christina, for the question. Indeed, we need to bring new knowledge to understand how these value creation and appropriation is distributed across the value chain. So I think this information is absolutely necessary if we are to actually deliver benefits for the waste collectors, informal waste collectors, but also across the system. So, for example, one idea is we have created some tools, for instance, in Brazil in the past called the selective collection SOCO, trying to understand how the value is appropriated across the secondary materials value chain. And now we see, of course, new opportunities with the digital tools that could be actually documenting what is happening at different stages. I think that this has huge transformative power if it is made available and if the informal workers are enabled to use it, because we will start generating data, we start documenting who is paid what, how much of the value is getting to each part of the chain and so on. And we can then use it to balance all these additional resources which can be directed in the system through the plastic credits. With that said, that's not without any difficulties, because we have issues about digital literacy, access to equipment, and so on. We have to ensure that this is done not in a way that we further marginalizing the informal waste collectors and recyclers rather than enabling them. So there is devil in the details, but these are some ideas that and new capabilities that can help us achieve what we intend here.
Great. Thank you so much, Kostas, for your insights. I would like to move on to the next risk, which is the risk of leaving relevant socioeconomic dimensions unconsidered. There is a tendency to overemphasize on bringing environmental benefits in terms of increased plastic waste collection, as well as enabling plastic footprint compensation to their buyers, that plastic credits fail to adequately, or there is a risk that they will adequately address the social dimension of the plastic waste crisis. As such, plastic-grade schemes run the risk of overlooking relevant social dimensions and long-term socioeconomic effects on the informal waste management sector, as well as to fail the latter's holistic integration. And I would like to ask Sonia if you can share best practice examples around measures to put in place to ensure human rights are respected in waste projects.
Yes, thank you for this very important question. I think it's very important for us to really be aware of the structural vulnerabilities that these communities of waste pickers suffer from. I guess, you know, in this group selected panelists, we all very well aware of the many risks that waste pickers face in terms of harassment from authorities as they navigate restrictions on access to recyclables, and how this threatens their livelihoods, and all the in the work that we have been doing at Wiego. One of the aspects we have been trying to do systematically is to document human rights violations. And we have a very interesting project that is taking place in Central America, in which we are conducting in-depth interviews with waste speakers and also observing what their work is and doing field visits in 6 Latin American countries to kind of paint a picture of the working conditions of these workers and how these amount, you know, to human rights violations. We have for us, it's very clear how many waste speakers don't know what exactly their rights are. And this is very important, that as we engage with the introduction of any new scheme, that we are fully aware of these, you know, pre-existing vulnerabilities and the level of education, which most often is very low, which makes it very hard for waste speakers to comply with rigid standards and rules, and even engage with digital interfaces. And at Wiego, we have been taking this very seriously. In the case of this human rights ongoing project we have in Central America, besides the documentation aspect of the research, we have also developed, our team has also developed a toolkit to support workers be aware of their rights, and also have been engaging with them in some cases, engaging with the Human Rights Commission. And I think this is one such example in which we need to take into consideration as we go down the road of implementing any new scheme. And plastic credits, it's, you know, although there are opportunities, there are huge risks that needs to really be fully considered. Thank you.
Great example, Sonia. And I would like to have a quick follow-up question to you. How do you see this risk impacting women in specific? Because we know that in waste management, we also need to be very gender sensitive, and that there is a gender issue that needs to be addressed. Can you provide your view on that briefly?
Yes, absolutely. I think this is a very, very important. We all know that you know, the traditional gender division of labor is very pervasive throughout the male-dominated waste management sector, and women are represented in greatest numbers at the base of the recycling value chain. And they are usually primarily working as sorters of recyclables, and they are also earning, the less than their male counterparts. So when we are usually and research has shown, the research that I've been doing in Brazil, digging into the data of our statistical systems has shown that, but research in other contexts as well has shown that efforts toward formalization of informal workers and towards introduction of new schemes really needs to consider women's rights and how we can introduce any new schemes, bearing in mind this pervasive gender division of labor. And I think one of the risks that we need to take into consideration is that as we introduce plastic credits, all informal workers are at risk in a way, but especially women, because the criteria that usually comes with it, which is more rigid, sometimes are beyond the workers' immediate ability. And we do need to factor in high investment in capacity building in terms of raising awareness and knowledge on digital interfaces, because without a continued capacity building for workers, and especially for women workers, they are the ones who are to be most impacted negatively by plastic credits.
Great, thank you so much for your valuable insights. Very important topic. I would like to ask Kostas also on what you think needs to be done to ensure safe and healthy working conditions and or other benefits outside economic gains for individual waste collectors. Can you share what challenges you have seen to ensure these key elements are being included, and provide your advice on how we could overcome those hurdles?
Yes, thank you, Christina. And I'm going to be building upon what Hassan and Barak have been saying more general. I think the one missed opportunity would have been just to use the additional financial resources that are channeled through the system through plastic credits, just to increase the expand to unrecyclable plastics, which is much needed. I'm advocating for that as well in my research, or just increase the number of people that are getting an income, or increase the livelihood per individual worker without empowering them to better living conditions, to better overall life, and to more systemic changes on what is wrong. So I think the overall distribution of the resources there should come along hand in hand with provisions of capacity building, enabling them to do a better job, a more even more professional, even more effective job, and also remove the risks from unsafely handling waste items with risks to their health, the risks that come with pressures for child labor, for example, and so on. And I'm not going to go on the whole list there, because they're already in that vulnerable position. They are getting to do those jobs, but at a very high personal cost and risks. And I think it's absolutely critical to consider that as part of the overall distribution of the resources. I think working within cooperatives, associations, with organizations like with Wiego, with all other organizations that bring expertise and bring self-awareness and genuine empowerment to the informal waste collectors and recyclers, it is absolutely feasible to beneficially use financial resources to empower them actually and make them less socially and more widely vulnerable. But I think in order to do that, we need to explicitly put it into the agenda on how we are distributing the financial resources made available through plastic credits. If we don't do it, it's going to be a missed opportunity. There will be some marginal gains for the environment and so on, but it will essentially reproducing the status quo at large. Okay.
Fantastic. Yeah, thanks, Costa, for your comments. I would like to move on now to the next risks, which is manifesting the status quo. Yeah, that plastic rate schemes can lead to a way that enables business as usual, allowing companies to still make environmental claims without actually undertaking significant changes. On what do you think? How can we mitigate this risk? Maybe also you can share a bit how you are dealing with this topic when you're engaging with the plastic credit buyers, on ensuring that the companies you work with are taking strategic action to reduce and design out waste and not only using plastic credit as an easy way out.
Thank you. I guess it's for me because you've been present for a sec. So absolutely, I think that today companies realize that they must develop holistic approach to their plastic footprint, which must start from reduction and changing packaging and invest in R&D. And we look at the plastic product impact through all its life cycle. And we don't look at that at a compensation system for plastic credit, but as a responsibility to create a change in the sourcing stage, meaning for every post-consumer plastic that they use for in their product, they can use and they should collect low-value plastic and take it out from the environment. And plastic credit is the way to do it. So it's basically not used from our side for compensation, for offsetting, but it's used for a way to create a bigger responsibility for the sources, in which if we collect value material from village or from a polluted area, we must collect as well low value from the same place and leave nothing behind. And when you look at with that kind of approach, it's not a way out, but it's a way for a responsibility. And we tell our clients and companies that we are engaged with, if we do a campaign that we are saving the oceans or cleaning the material, cleaning spaces because we managed to remove value material, it's not enough. We also need to be responsible for the low value there. And then we look at plastic credit as a tool to create significant impact that will not be achieved otherwise in the beginning of the life cycle of the material from the sourcing part. In additional to that, it's a way for companies to create impact in space that it's not been taking otherwise because it's low value and there is no space. But today, I think that consumers and companies are very well aware to the public trend, to greenwashing. It's in every conversation. Always, it's risky not to play it right. So I don't think that plastic credit is the way. If it's used only as compensation without doing nothing, so of course it's wrong. And this is a risk, I think, for the whole plastic credit market to go down. But if we use it in other way to create impact and responsibility in the sourcing stage and leave nothing behind, so it's a very, very much needed project that can basically create a global change. It's not the only thing that company should do. For sure, they must do a lot of things. It's holistic approach, but it's one tool inside the box that definitely can reduce mismanaged plastic pollution.
Thanks, Barak, for your statement. Kamala, can you reflect on this risk and share any recommendations or action being taken by UNEP to help ensure private sector actors prioritize waste prevention strategies and when plastic credits are being used as a complementary measurement in an overall strategy? You're still on mute. Oh, you can't hear you.
Sorry. Thanks, Christina. Apologies for that. So maybe on this human rights-based approach, what UNEP has been working on, especially through the Sea Circular project, is what we have done is we have provided some kind of a platform that brings together different stakeholders to discuss this issue, and we have targeted businesses in 2 countries, Indonesia and Philippines, where there are businesses who are part of this extended producer responsibility, to also sensitize them and to make them aware on rights-based approach. So, and also to help them understand the role of the informal sector plays, and that the importance of also improving the conditions and risk faced by them, as rightly pointed out also by Sonia. So it's more of sensitization, training, and also awareness raising, which is lacking. So the other work that UNEP has done through Sea Circular also is this research work that was carried out. We also have done another research study to understand the effects of plastic credits for the informal sector, and understanding the scheme, which is YH study. And we also engaged the ISWA, the International Solid Waste Association, to do a broader study on plastic credits. So what we have done is basically maybe more general, and also to bring about good practices on community-based approach, which we actually did engage LeedsTontoton for their exemplary case study as part of providing the solutions. Also, I want to mention, in line with what other speakers have mentioned, is that the plastic credit should be like a last mile options. Businesses should actually look at looking at reducing their plastic footprints in their operations before relying on plastic credits. So by then, so we are also not looking at substituting just like greenwashing, but then to have a very holistic approach in addressing the plastic pollution problem, and that the option of plastic credits are transitional and a last mile options for businesses to consider. Only then I think we can address this issue in a very holistic manner.
Thank you, Kamala, for your reflection on that. And now I would like to open the floor to the audience Q&A related to the risk that we just discussed. And I would like to take 1 or 2 questions from the conference room in Geneva first. Are there any questions?
Please raise your hand. Okay, I see here. Please briefly introduce yourself and ensure the volume is loud enough to make all the panelists to be heard. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Mamokhala Musekene. I'm from South Africa. I just want to understand with regard to the dependency on voluntary sources of funding, what have been the lessons coming from the EPR schemes in terms of addressing that dependency? Thank you.
Thank you for that question. Who from the panelists would like to take that? Come up, Barak, please.
Yeah, sure. Thank you for the question. I think that EPRs today starting in more and more countries, especially in Southeast Asia, around 60 countries altogether. Today, they tackle all type of waste, of course, and within plastic, I think it's more concerned about the value, the collecting back of the valuable, the recyclable materials, not yet treating the low value because there is not so much ways to treat those materials, like what to do with those eventually. So that's why additional intervention it's needed. In some countries, like in the Philippines, EPRs, plastic credit combined into the EPR. It's a case model. I think it will be very interesting to see. It's also something that's expected to be in Cambodia, and it can drive a big change if more and more private sector, private companies can enter into the space and create a change over there with certified models that are approved by the government, like OBP certification or BRS certification, or one that are created locally. So at the moment, it is a voluntary market, same as the carbon credit, but very different. But we definitely hope that if it will go into EPR scheme, so much more attention and funds will go into this segment, and then impact can increase largely. Thank you.
Thank you, Barak. Sonia, you would like also to comment?
Yes, please. Just to a comment on the nature of voluntary schemes. We have been defending that EPR schemes must be regulated, implemented, monitored, and enforced by government bodies. I think voluntary schemes are too weak, and we need to have a clear role of government bodies to avoid confusion about the EPR responsibilities. And we also have been advocated that EPR should be, the mandatory schemes should be mandatory and cover the full costs of waste management. And of course, with clear and gradual targets and some enforcement, consistent enforcement. Yeah, just to raise that. Thank you.
Thank you, Sonia. Kei-Ching, is there another question?
Any other questions? Okay, here.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Buthelezi from South Africa. Thank you for the presentation. I just wanted to check on the risks that you have identified. Did you perhaps have a chance to look at how policy could assist in minimizing the potential risks, the 7 risks that you have identified? Perhaps you could use one of the examples, one of the risks that you have provided the role of policy. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much for that question. We do have laid out recommendations in the report to both policy makers and practitioners. So both the plastic credit buyers or the plastic credit offerers, the companies who are engaged, the organizations engaged in that. And we will also, after this Q&A, have a look at some of them to discuss it also today. Maybe to mention one that you said, to kind of look at how it could be addressed. I think the one on the insufficient distribution of the funds could be very easily addressed through policy, that ideally in the context of the global plastic treaty negotiations, that a framework is being set for plastic credit schemes that would harmonize the market around definitions, terminologies, but also on the distribution and the pricing scheme. I think this could be a very important element. Okay, with that.
Okay, I think we also have another question. Okay.
Okay, good. Go ahead. Let's take one more and then we'll proceed.
I thank you for the interesting discussion. I'm Varun and I'm from India. Just wanted to understand now that the plastic credits market has been growing. I wanted to understand your opinions on whether there will be, any inclusions in the Global Plastics Treaty about that there will be any literature around the plastic credits, because extended producer responsibility is definitely on the cards for the plastics treaty, but there's no mention of voluntary plastic credits so far. So.
Who would like to comment from the panelists? Kostas, yeah, please.
Sure, I can take that. Well, I'll try to. I'm not sure. I mean, as you know, in terms of the plastic treaty, the Intergovernmental Negotiations Committee, the INC, is convening soon in Paris in less than a month's time. So we'll be setting out, of course, what is going to be included and the nature of things, and it's going to be a long-term negotiation there. Should be based on evidence. I think the report that is released here today is a very important one, setting the scene and posing a lot of pertinent questions. There should be findings from application and other academic research also to be incorporated there if we are to arrive to evidence-based solutions. But sometimes we are in a chicken and egg situation, especially in that very complex systems. We can see, for example, the experience we had from the EPR systems in Europe that have been implemented in decades with very fragmented and diversified ways. And I think definitely there are lessons learned from that regarding the effectiveness and the transparency of those schemes and the need for further harmonization and standardization. Hopefully, some of those lessons can be incorporated into the provisions, onto the mandatory provisions of the treaty around ending plastics pollution. But of course, always there should be some level of flexibility. I think the report is providing some ideas in that direction. For example, on the calculation of pricing, that should be standardized, but then leaving room for local diversifying of the actual prices and so on. So I think we can incorporate tangible knowledge. It doesn't mean that we have all this knowledge now, but yeah, we should be collating and using it to inform the solutions.
Thank you, Kostas. Thank you very much. And in the interest of time, I would now move on to provide a brief overview of the identified opportunities without going into the deep dive, and would like to advise and refer to the report to see the detailed explanations on them, because I believe the opportunities and the benefits are obvious and are less critical for discussion. So what were the opportunities that the report identified? First, of course, the aspect that it will provide additional income for informal waste workers and overall funding to waste management systems, especially in the Global South, which are currently underfunded. Then second, the opportunity to improve the role of women in informal waste management. And I think Sonia have given us great insights on best practices on how this could be ensured. It's also an opportunity to give the informal sector a voice in the international discourse. And this goes also along with recommendations that we are making, that we see it as very critical that they need to be incorporated in the setup of plastic credit schemes. Number 4, providing waste management data for better policy making that will come through plastic credit schemes that highly are built on digital tools and data tracking that come along with the type of plastic quantities, but also the compensations. So the data that is being generated from these plastic rate schemes will provide an opportunity for better policy making. Then number 5, the opportunity to professionalize the waste management value chain. I think Kostas has also elaborated on the need for capacity building and all of that around the working standards, the working conditions, and the improvement of the capabilities of these people can lead to a professionalization of the value chain through additional funding coming from plastic credits. And then finally, the opportunity to bridge the funding gap until EPR systems are in place. I think this is a big challenge that we currently have, that in many places, EPR systems are underway, and it takes time for the policies to be in place, but also the implementation. And plastic credits, if they're implemented well, if the risks are being taken into consideration, may provide the short-term funding that is needed right now in order to improve the waste management systems and bridge that time until EPR systems are being in place. And with that, I want to go over the recommendations. But give me a second. To here's the slide on and as I mentioned before, there are more recommendations in the report, and I want to highlight 3 now, and then also ask the panelists for their opinion and open the floor for further questions and discussions from the room. The number 1 recommendation that comes pretty naturally is that plastic grade schemes need to consider the social dimension of plastic waste management on the ground. The aspects that we elaborated initially, that currently there's a big focus on the environmental aspects, and these risks need to be mitigated and make sure that human rights are being respected and that everyone in the waste value chain benefits from plastic grade schemes. And we need the biggest efforts on the most vulnerable groups. Recommendation number 2, plastic rates should only be a complement to a company's holistic plastic waste reduction strategy. We also discussed that we need to avoid that plastic credits simply manifest the status quo, and that the transition to a circular economy that we need is sort of being hindered, or that plastic credits sort of infuel also the impression that it's simply a measurement for companies for greenwashing, for making environmental claims without making an actual impact and taking their strategy holistically seriously. And then number 3, an international plastic waste treaty is needed to streamline global plastic credit activities around the definition, terms, terminologies, price calculations, verifications, etc., etc. And leaving you with these thoughts, I would like to ask each of the panelists to share with us what do you think are the key next steps that need to take place? And maybe you also want to relate your message to the BRS-COP event that is happening right now. Kostas, do you want to go first?
Sure. I think what we have here is an excellent contribution to the debate with the level of evidence that we have so far, which is a bit rich in insights and understanding, and but still on something that is in preliminary phase of application. We would like to see a bit more hard evidence from systems implemented, and to see the actual, what has been their effectiveness. Have actually these been effective in improving the condition of and the overall ability of the informal sector recyclers to collect and recover plastics and overall sustainability. I think that's the next step, most important thing in that direction, to document tangible success stories and try to build upon them, giving us the confidence that this is feasible, it has been done, and we can take it from there. I think in terms of the BRS event as well, I think is the fact that we're having here the combination of the environmental protection dimensions with the wider socioeconomic inclusion that is getting into the agenda, is merged, and is really considered alongside, which is absolutely a necessity for a real sustainable way forward. And I'm very pleased to see that we have the opportunity to have these things side by side. And thank you for all this, a great opportunity. I think the report is making a difference in that direction, and we'll see more evidence built upon that.
Thank you so much, Costa, and also for your contribution. Kamala, do you want to go next?
Yes, sure. I think just adding on to what Costa has said, I think it's a great opportunity to look at the issue from the environmental, the economic, and the social perspective. And plastic credit schemes can become the link to all this. So it's a great opportunity, but then just to reiterate the issue from UNEP's perspective, addressing the problem to significantly reduce the problem, there need to be a real shift from this linear plastics economy to a circular economy throughout the life cycle of plastics, so that the solutions that is being done in one, perhaps at one side in terms of looking at alternatives, are not offset by incentives or any actions that might hamper such improvement. So what we are looking at is key transformations, systemic shift that is needed to reduce the size of the problem, design for circularity and its effective application, and dealing with plastic waste that are already in the environment in a very holistic approach. And today's discussion has brought in all the elements, as well as the report that Wiego has done for us. So just to reiterate, plastic credits should be like a last mile option, and to mainly deal with plastic circularity, plastic leakage from the circularity point of view, because we know that there will be still plastic waste even in a circular economy model. Agree that there should be a global global level agreement and consensus on the transparency, the harmonized approach, data monitoring, and of course, it also gives an opportunity for tracking, traceability through the data collection mechanism that plastic credit schemes can provide. Also, that it should be linked to an EPR scheme that and aligned to any efforts at national level, and to support EPR scheme and perhaps be a transitional solution to an EPR scheme. And definitely the last point that I would like to make is that to consider the human rights-based approach when dealing with credits to ensure better livelihood and also social uplifting, and to within the principle of leaving no one behind. Yeah, that's it.
Thank you so much, Kamala. Barak, in your view, what are the most important next steps that need to be taken?
Thank you. I think, first of all, we must acknowledge that we don't have time to waste. We have a current immediate problem that started decades ago of leakage of plastic to the environment and to the ocean. Plastic credit can offer already immediate solution to stop especially the non-recyclable plastic from leakage and from entering the ocean. It's something that's happening already and can be implemented in much bigger scale. In terms of working conditions and social rights, I think plastic credit, because we are coming from the environmental and social aspect, backed by protocols like VERA and OBP, that define very, very clearly how to treat and how to work with the waste pickers, how to document everything, and we are doing much, much more. It's a way of, it's kind of a role model in the plastic collection scene, because the traditional value materials suffer from lack of transparency and traceability. We don't know much who is collecting and in which conditions, and plastic credit do know. So in that way, it's a role model and a way to maybe improve the existing system by creating a full scheme of collecting value and non-value on the same type of model. I think that within the COP and the global treaty, if we manage to acknowledge and see plastic credit as an innovative financial mechanism that can support right now the stop and stop the leakage of plastic and find a solution for low value, especially on the global south, where there is poor waste management, where there is a very big leakage, and there is no solutions coming. Also with EPR, there's no solutions coming in the next years. So if we want to wait to connect it into EPR's schemes, and the government will need to see who is doing and what and how and who is controlling, and it will take years. And by then we will have another 20 or 30 million tons of plastic in the ocean. So we can wait, it's okay, but I don't think that anyone can afford to wait right now. And we are basically connecting and with the same subject, plastic credit, to a global producer responsibility, not to extended producer, which is locally, but globally. Companies today source their raw materials from all over the world. They need 50,000 tons of PET, so they collect it from Africa and Asia and South America and so on. But on the same time, they don't touch the low value plastic, and with plastic credit, they can connect to this link. So it's not end of, it's not the last mile in my perspective, it's the first mile. That actually need to be done right now, because if you are collecting value, you should collect the low value. So this is something that every company that's using post-consumer plastic on a 1+1 base, collect this plus this, we can create a very big change. Thank you.
Thanks, Barak. Sonia, your thoughts on next steps?
Yes, thank you. I think building from what Kamala has said, I think we need to really take plastics credit, within a more systemic kind of approach, and taking into consideration that we really need to think about these schemes within circular economy systems, and not to divert from one of the main goal. We need to reduce the production of plastic products. We need to have a very comprehensive change in terms of consumption. And I think Costas really touch upon something that for me it's really important. We really need a systematic documentation to fully assess the risks and the opportunities for workers. And I think we need to really design a process of documenting the impacts of these schemes from the onset, having a basic framework which deals with human rights and sustainability key issues, that makes the cases, a few cases that we investigate over time, in a kind of a deep dive that makes it comparable, but at the same time allowing this framework, allowing for some flexibility so that we can really see what kind of context factors plays out in terms of determining whether these schemes are beneficial or not, both to the environment and for workers. So yeah, I think for me, these are the two key issues. Not to get diverted from plastic credits and using it as a panacea, you know, to solve everything. So using it as a last resource is key, and having documentation over time, and perhaps from the onset of the introduction of these schemes. Thank you.
Thank you, Sonia. Kei-Ching, are there any questions in the room with regards to the recommendations?
Oh, okay. Okay, you can take.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and good afternoon. It's Gauta Mokoena from South Africa. Just checking on the recommendations to say, are there cases of policy or legislative instruments that are used somewhere that aimed at recommendation 1, addressing the social dimensions of plastics waste management in the EPR schemes? If there is such examples, one would be interested to get to access a copy of those, largely because the social dimensions in terms of legislation, there might be in certain cases are handled by different ministries or departments as opposed to that of environment. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. So there are no policy examples particular to that mentioned in the report, but I would like to look at the panel if anyone of the panelists has any best practices that they are aware that can be shared.
Thank you.
I don't see anyone's hand up, which I believe might be due to the fact that there are simply no policies in place yet on plastic credits, and specifically then on this topic on how to mitigate that first risk. Is there any other, Barak, you wanted to comment?
Yeah, I can just add that there is a very clear protocol for plastic credit that most of the companies they're doing that, walking by that, and the protocols indicate exactly how to monitor, how to cooperate with informal waste pickers. If I can tell you from our side, for what we are doing, every waste picker have signed on a contract kind of agreement that he knows exactly how much money he gets, where he can collect from, what the code of conduct of engaging, like no child labor is allowed, and so on, and he walks by that. And on the same time, we have a team of community managers, kind of social workers, that go and check and audit places. And if we know that the waste picker they have children and the children are not in school, so for sure they will help the family to collect the waste. And then we can find solution. We can connect a childcare NGO to them, and then find solutions for the children. And if there is no solution in place, so the children will continue to work. And we see a lot of child labor in the sector that's collecting the valuable materials, and nobody cares, basically, nobody knows also. So plastic credit does work under protocols, private protocols, independent, not our own protocol, but it's a different one. You can search for Zero Plastic Oceans, the OBP protocol, and you can see the whole thing. So because we work on a voluntary market, a private sector and initiatives. So there is a type of policies that we are following that created by the market, and they are very strict and audited by a third party control body. Right? So it's not just that we are doing what we are doing. There is people that monitored us that it's not from the company. Thank you.
Thank you, Barak.
So you also have some following up questions, right?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Just a short follow-up to say the example of the protocol does have quite a lot. I'm just checking whether is it accessible and whether can the guideline also serve the same purpose. Thank you.
Barak, can you respond to that?
I don't understand the question, to be honest.
I think the question is whether the guidelines that you were referring to, if this can be shared.
Oh yeah,
Or
absolutely.
the protocol.
Yeah, absolutely. It's publicly aware. If you can contact me later, I can send you. But you can look at the Zero Plastic Ocean, the OBP current website. I can share it here in the group chat, and it's completely completely open to download. It's publicly.
Thanks, Barak. We can, like all the attendees on site, you can leave your email addresses, and then we can facilitate the sharing of the materials to the attendees. Kejing, do we have one final question, since we're coming to the end of our session?
I think right now no one asks any questions here. Are there any online questions?
Not at this point. Then I think it's a great moment for closing. And before I hand over to Kamala to provide us with her reflection on the session, I would also like to share some helpful resources or information that might be of interest. Yunus Environment Hub was part of a consortium to develop a standard process model for the transparent calculation and verification of plastic credits. And that resulted in the publication of a handbook giving some very useful tips for both the service providers and plastic credit buyers that you can access on our website and also through the Prevent Waste Alliance website, who was funding this project. And I also want to mention the Prevent Waste Alliance, where we are a member, and there is a working group on plastic credits that has been formed with the objective or with a desire to work on a roadmap on the harmonization of the plastic credit landscape, which I think is great because the group consists of members of plastic credits limit setters, organizations developing plastic credits, recycling companies, digital platform developers, researchers, consultants. So very holistic. And the topics that were agreed that the participants of this working group would be working on are around developing joint positions on terminology, minimum requirements, and terms and definitions. And that these inputs will be aligned with the INC meetings of the UN Plastic Treaty process, and first results of this working group shall be presented in a side event at the INC 3 meeting in November this year. And with that, I would like to hand over to Kamala to summarize our discussion today and for closing the meeting.
Thank you, Christina, and thank you, dear panelists, for this very insightful discussions, and also to the audience for your engagement. This has been excellent. We're glad that UNEP through Sea Circular and Yunus Environment Hub collaborated on this study, which has provided this platform for our discussion and recommendations that can feed into the INC process. Yes, there's a lot of work that we need to do and engage on, and I think that I'm also happy to hear that you're doing more work on some of the gaps that need to be addressed for plastic credit systems. And hopefully this would be aligned with the overall holistic approach that we would like to promote, which is also what the global agreement outline looks at from a life cycle perspective, which is great. So other point is that UNEP, so there's this INC process where I think this is a great opportunity to bring the voices of different stakeholders to ensure that we have a successful model or an agreement that all of us can adopt and also apply. And also this voice opportunities to provide the voices through the different mechanisms that the INC is providing, that is these formal negotiations by member states as well as these multi-stakeholder forums. So it's a great opportunity to feed, and we're glad that this report could contribute to that effort. Also, UNEP is going to, in a few weeks' time, we'll be also launching a report on UNEP's strategic approach to guide member state stakeholders on how to address the issue from a holistic level. So please look out for that report also. That will be launched mid of May. Perhaps the last point that I would like to say is because I've reiterated what I want to say on plastic credit, so I won't repeat, but to finally thank Yunus Environment Hub, as well as the China Biodiversity Conservation and Green Development Foundation for co-organizing this interactive meeting. Thank you, and over to you, Christina.
Thank you so much, Kamala. And with that, I also want to express my thanks to the panelists for the enriching discussion. Thank the audience for their questions, and finally also Kei Ching and our partner for co-hosting the event. It has been a pleasure, and I'm wishing continued good discussions and negotiations at the BRS-COP event, and looking forward to seeing some of you during the INC2 meeting in Paris. Have a good rest of your afternoon. See you soon. Bye.